love this race so much.
To some degree, it should, yes. 12-year-olds are capable of it.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Thanks all. Sorry for the late meeting, but we had another forum that ran over. Call to order the Montpelier-Roxbury Board of School Commissioners at, sorry, I need the time. 6:52. So first order is public comment, which is 5 minutes. So
I'm Elaine Toohey.
okay, and please either come to the microphone or the chair, and you just announce yourself. But please announce yourself again. This is just for that.
You're not going to be louder. It's
Yes.
just for the video camera.
Yeah.
So I'm Elaine Toohey. I'm a parent of a student, current student, and I have 2 other students who will be coming up through. One's 2, so not for a while. And I'm just here to kind of give some input about health education that my kids reflected back to me. And I guess that education, that piece is that I would like to see that be more inclusive of all students. And I guess the big pieces with that have come up are being able to redirect conversations and being really kind of educated on some subjects that are difficult or even triggering or traumatizing. And having some outside people maybe come in and talk on those specific topics. And yeah, I think that's the biggest piece. My child is transgender, so there were things that happened last year that he actually is not in health class now, and a correspondence class to cover his health education is not acceptable. The class needs to actually be, and the curriculum needs to be set up in a way where my child's included, so, and all children are included in that curriculum.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mara Iverson. I also live in Montpelier, and I also wanted to chat about health education. My focus is mainly that sex education in the Montpelier School District really needs a lot of things. It could use some review, it could use some thinking about whether more educators are necessary, whether they're trained to offer appropriate information. I actually mostly, the first time I got worried about it was when I had a student, I teach sex ed in town at the church, I teach the OWL program, and one of my students who had been through my program came and said, the health teacher today told us that non-latex condoms don't prevent pregnancy and STIs. And I was like, well, then what would be the point of wearing one if it didn't prevent pregnancy and STIs? And so I was like, what are you learning at school if that seemed concerning to me? So that's my, I'd really be interested in having a deeper conversation about what we could do to enhance, broaden, deepen sex education in Montpelier School District. Thanks.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you both.
So you know that is a topic on our agenda for that
Yeah.
upcoming time.
Yeah, we are going to continue discussions about it.
Is there a timeline or a when or a?
It will certainly appear on the agenda. We haven't set any timeline. I think we're likely going to do it in the, in the guise of making sure we promote equity on a gender and basis. And great.
Did you figure out how to find the agenda?
We did. We figured out that cell phones don't access all of your agendas, so that
That's good to know.
That is good to know.
We both have access to different information, and neither of us have access to all of it.
Huh. Okay.
Well, that's a bug.
Yeah.
Let's fix that.
We'll figure that out.
We'll look into that.
It's all accessible through Google Drive, right?
I'd have to look.
Isn't that where everything is?
The
Is that where you
agendas
want?
are
Like,
No,
the
we're on your
agenda.
website, and you
Yeah.
can't scroll over to the board packets on mine, so I didn't know there were board packets. And then on hers, you can see the board packets, but they stop at December. I can see all the way to the end of the year, I just can't see all the way over, so it's
Huh.
just really awesome.
Interesting. Thank you for letting us know that.
It's better than when you couldn't even get anything on your iPad. We've improved
still
a
a
little
problem.
bit.
Still a problem.
Who's this guy? I'm not sworn in.
You haven't sworn in yet?
We're still in public comment
I
though.
thought about it before this second.
You can do it by phone, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're supposed to do it before your term's up.
Alright.
Consent agenda. Okay, and, yeah, thanks for the reminder. Unfortunately, the learning focus piece, which is a big part of our agenda, the students were unable to come tonight. There were some things that popped up, so we have a much shorter agenda, which, since we're starting late, is not the worst thing in the world. We're talking about that. Is Renee on call if we need her earlier?
Yeah, I can check.
Okay.
Is
Okay.
she here?
No.
She's
I was
gonna
wondering.
Google chat in, but if she's not thinking she has to be till to 8, she might.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Any?
I have a quick oh my god, I'm sorry, this is.
Well, the question is, so you can get it on your phone, but maybe we just need more clear navigational instructions.
Okay. So did that have to do with the consent agenda?
Could be Apple, could be operating system.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, to address that, I noticed that it wouldn't scroll up, anyways, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It can be dealt with outside this. I do have
Cool.
a question about the
Consent
consent
agenda.
agenda. It was something related to the superintendent's report, which is the unified basketball team.
Okay, so do you want to remove that from the?
Yes,
Okay. So let's make a motion to.
just
Do
to
I
ask,
remove
just ask
something?
a question, or we don't even need to remove it. If we can approve it, and I just would like to ask a question.
Afterwards?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. We
we
held
do
a
that?
discussion after the motion is approved to accept the consent agenda. There's
So
time for
we
discussion.
can discuss after,
So,
after we approve?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
I
after
know it
you
doesn't hinge
make the
on-
motion, after you make the motion to accept, is there any more discussion? And then, after the
Okay.
discussion is over, we would accept.
Even for consent agenda,
thought you couldn't do
the
that
whole
for-
point was you can't discuss consent agenda.
Yeah, well, let's just pull that and approve without that item, and then we'll discuss it.
I amend
Did
my
folks see
motion
that
to.
Heather sent out a different distribution list this afternoon, just adding Roxbury Village School?
Yeah.
I saw
So
it.
I amend my motion to say that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, taking out the superintendent's report and noting that the list of where agendas and warnings are different than was in the packet. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, your question?
This will be very brief. The unified basketball team.
Yeah.
Is that Montpelier and U32? Is that a combined sports team?
We have some students from U32 on that team, yes.
Okay.
Matt McLean's son Noah is on it, as well as Carolyn Canari's daughter is on it. So, yeah, we often share things with U32 when they don't offer,
So,
or we don't offer.
so that's great, because that kind of dovetails into my question, and it doesn't need to be addressed for next time. Maybe this summer it can be addressed, but a question that I've received numerous questions about, well, how are we sharing resources with U32? Are we operating in silos? Do we share? Are there opportunities to leverage economies of scale and offer enhanced programming? And I know we are doing that in some
Yeah, the
places.
quick answer is yes. So when U32, I'm sorry if I cut you off. But
No,
U32 offers something that we don't, for instance, football, then Montpelier students can try out for that team. And when Montpelier offers something that U32 doesn't, debate, then U32 students can join us.
How about with academic programming?
We don't have as much sharing going on with academic programming.
So I guess a question, and I don't know how difficult.
We have that, but the schedules don't.
Yeah, it's hard. It gets a
Okay.
little more difficult when you're talking about classes, in-house classes.
So it's primarily for extracurriculars
Yes.
where
Yes.
we're seeing this. Would it be possible at some point to just get an outline of where we are sharing those resources? Is Is that
Yeah.
something that would be onerous?
No.
Because that would just, I think, help inform the discussion about this, because it's something that regularly comes up. But thanks. Like I said, wasn't going to impact my vote on this. So should I make a motion to approve the superintendent's report?
Yes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
I can also say, just a last little bit, the final, Heather, you know this, the final unified basketball game is next Tuesday, the 11th at 3:30. It's a great time to come and cheer on the kids. So Thursday. So if anybody can come, then please come on over. I'll take a picture and tweet it out. Yeah, but it's a good time. It's a good time.
Great. So next is board business. The first item, when we put our merger agreement together, there was a typo. A couple of digits on a statutory reference in a cut and paste job did not get removed. So the articles of merger between Roxbury and Montpelier reference a statute that does not exist. And were the specifics in the packet? I don't remember.
Yeah, Heather
Yeah, there
printed
were.
out she just printed out the
Okay.
emails with it.
Yeah. So we talked to Pietro. He said the simplest way to kind of cross the i's and dot the t's on this was just to have the board recognize and approve that that was a typographical error and that there's a correction to that error. It was like
And
section
the-
55 and it was
truly
printed
the
as like
only-
section 5536.
Right, the
So glad we
only
had those lawyers.
Huh?
change for the public is that it's just a number that
It's
was
just a number.
incorrect.
Yeah,
So they're
exactly.
not changing any substance, you're just changing the number to reflect the actual number.
Exactly. It is a cut and paste mistake.
Jim, who found the cut and paste mistake?
Steve
Steve
Dale, who was the
Right. He was just
Oh,
going back
Jim
and reading the
Just-
old.
He was going nightly
fun.
reading,
For fun?
you know?
Yeah.
He says it has been brought to my attention. But I don't know.
I don't know who brought it to his attention. Yes.
I was curious.
Maybe I
extremely
think I could have been someone
detail-oriented
at
person.
the SBA or
Yeah.
maybe he had a family member that was having some problems sleeping and
Decided to read the
Yeah.
merger agreement again.
So if we could have a vote on making that change,
So we need a motion.
we need a motion. That's what I meant to say.
Do we need a motion that's this whole thing that Steve said at the bottom? I mean, I'll read that if that's what we need to do.
Sure.
It's just kind of long.
Yeah.
All right, I will move that as follows. The Articles of Agreement were approved by the electorate of the Montpelier-Roxbury Public Schools in spring 2017. In March 2019, we were informed of a typographical error in Article 11. The original approved article specified that in the new district, the vote on the, quote, annual budget and public questions shall be conducted by Australian ballot pursuant to 17 VSA Chapter 5513B, close quote. There is no Chapter 5513B. The intent of that wording was to simply read pursuant to 17 VSA Chapter 55. That typo is hereby corrected by vote of the Montpelier-Roxbury School District Board. Article 11 is modified to read, the Unified District Board of School Directors shall propose annual budgets in accordance with 16 VSA Chapter 11. The vote on the annual budget and public questions shall be conducted by Australian ballot pursuant to 17 VSA Chapter 55.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Or any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, done that. Next item is after-school discussion. I'll just open it.
Can I just ask, who's gonna actually do it? I mean, someone has to actually do this now, right?
Where is it filed?
I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Good idea.
Okay, sorry.
That's a good question. Who do we inform?
Like, we could take the
Tell
minutes
Steve.
that
I would
reflected
imagine if
and
he was the
staple it
person
to.
who did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you
At
just do
least
that.
Steve would know.
Staples.
who to-
Steve would
Yeah.
know where to go with it.
Right.
Yeah, all right.
So where is this kept? Who's the keeper of
That's what we don't happen to know right now. I'm assuming maybe the Agency of
district.
Education.
Yeah, the
We
district
probably have to
clerk.
send it to, oh, right, the district
The
clerk.
district clerk.
That's right.
Oh, that's probably the person.
So, Tammy Legacy.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll,
Yeah. She has something to do.
That's great.
okay. So after school discussion, we've had quite a bit of progress on making a decision about what the after school programming will be next year, basically on the provider. As you know, back in, was it December? No, January. Back in January, we tasked and appointed a committee to set up an RFP process where we would take in bids and that the committee would work with Libby on advising her about a decision. That committee has been formed. I want to thank all the members, including Bridget, but also we have a couple community members, Christine Zaki, Rebecca Copans, Cassie Wilner, Sam Brondike, who's a student representative, and then Ryan Harity, the principal of UES, and Matt Roy, the vice principal at MS have also participated in the committee. We've received, the committee worked to set out some parameters, put together the RFP. We sent it out, we received 4 proposals, one from CC, which is the existing provider, and is an entity of Washington Central Supervisory Union. One from the After School Collaborative, which is doing business known as Part 2, which is a for-profit provider that provides after-school services for a lot of schools in Chittenden County, that's looking to expand into Washington County. The Y, which actually does programming nationally, but they have a pretty vigorous program in Vermont, and they provide throughout the state, including to our neighbors in Waterbury and Barry, and the Montpelier Rec Department. We passed out, we're weighing costs, we're weighing capacity, we're weighing kind of all the factors that we put together. But a piece I wanted to talk about, or want Libby to talk about in addition to the proposals, is as we make a decision, there's kind of 2 components to after-school care. There's the license component, which is regulated by the state, which most of the UES programming falls into. As you start to get to the older grades, we have a lot more what we call enrichment programming, which is somewhat like co-curricular, but a little different. It's the more segment programming that oftentimes focuses on an activity, mountain biking, a sport, woodworking, etc. That's not licensed. That programming right now, a lot of that programming is provided by the current provider and funded through a combination of fees, subsidy from the district, and then revenue that's generated from the licensed programming, particularly at Union Elementary School. That's a critical piece of our after-school care. We did not ask for the RFPs to include that. We asked the RFPs only to include the licensed portion. 3 of the RFPs only included the licensed portion. 1 of the RFPs also included the non-licensed after-school portion, so the committee's trying to consider it with that in mind. But what we want to do with the non-licensed enrichment program, we obviously want that to continue. It's very popular. It does great things for kids. We want to continue along the value lines that it currently exists, and with as much continuity as possible. But we also want to think about chances to really expand and stabilize that, and also fix some issues we've had. For instance, there's just been some issues with transportation and doing that legally in a way that meets demand. So one consideration that we've been batting around is bringing that piece in district. And that would require a commitment of current funds and probably some additional funds to do that, to make that sustainable. But there's a lot of advantages to that. And I'll let Libby kind of explain the thinking.
Sure, we're in the beginning stages of this, and I have something that was not part of your board packet, and I apologize for that. I was getting feedback up until 3 o'clock today. I don't know who would do that. From some members of the after school committee, and I wanted to make sure I heard from people. And so this is very much draft. Okay, so put that in mind. The district, we have budgeted, and it has passed because our budget passed, $37,000 towards some sort of after-school piece. So what this draft proposal, is putting out there, I'm gonna make sure Steve gets one, is that we hire a new position. So we hire a position for a 0.5, right, currently, that's what we're thinking the need is from leadership team, a 0.5 extended day enrichment coordinator. That person would be responsible for organization, logistics, parent registration, collecting fees, working with our business office to making it happen. It would be very similar to food services. Sorry, I don't want to put my back down. How food services is run currently, which is run as an enterprise. So we would add an additional enterprise, and I'm actually happy Grant is not in the room because he starts to choke up a little bit when I suggest that, but because from him at his end it's a little difficult. But we could do that. We already have it in place with food services. So that position would be collecting the funds. They'd be going out in the community to find community partnerships, surveying students to find out what their likes and dislikes and what they really want for club-like activities. We would also be looking at, so there's that position. So I'll separate that first. That's what I'm proposing for the board. I believe that the $37,000 would cover a 0.5 position under the AFSCME contract. We're also looking at these club activities being, we'd ask parents to contribute as they do now, in a very low cost way. So that cost would also help provide sustainability to that position, as well as increase our capacity over time. So one of the pieces that we really are looking at is to have licensed engaged childcare from K through 6 offered to our students, and then starting with lots of engaging activities as part of that process. So they're not just sitting there doing coloring pages, right?
Provided by someone else.
Contracted out, yes. Contracted by somebody else. They would be responsible through work with our principals and our community around what engaging club-like activities that would require. Then when students move into 7th grade, they move into more enrichment, extended day, not licensed choice activities that we offer multiple, very similar to what we have now, except it's more sustainable because it'd be through a district lens. We'd be able to protect it and to move forward with increasing our capacity. We see that at the leadership team level as a potential possibility to transition students well between 8th and 9th grade and provide a bridge in a very fun, easy way, as well as increase our capacity for opportunities that are not sports, drama, or music related here at the high school necessarily. We have excellent opportunities for kids if they're into sports and drama and music. If you're not into those 3 things, then we have less opportunity here at the high school. We're also very cognizant. I've been talking to Dave Bennett quite a bit, who is a person who's been doing this work at the high school. Both he and I are very concerned with overscheduled, highly involved kids, and so providing opportunities to let go of some of that and work with anxiety, which is huge. With our overscheduled, highly functioning kids, as well as provide opportunities for kids who just aren't into sports and aren't into drama, but still want to have a group to work on leadership skills and develop themselves and working with people without a screen in their face. So Dave and I have been talking quite a bit about that, and I also feel as Renee comes on in a little bit, that's an excellent project for a new principal to take on here at the high school to help vision and build that program. So back to the position is key because it allows us to sustain, build, and grow from where we are now.
Questions, Andrew?
How is that money currently being used?
Currently, it is given to CC to offset the cost at MSMS.
And
Tina?
would the theory be that I understand what this person's gonna do, and then the activities themselves are self-supporting?
Through parent revenue.
Right, through
And
a fee.
And, yeah.
Okay.
So the vision is not that the person hired to be the coordinator would be the person providing.
No. In fact, we wouldn't want them to provide the services. We want them to focus on the logistical piece, so the people who do provide services can really focus on that and develop high-quality programming.
Would that increase the cost to students who are using the program?
I don't envision that happening. We haven't gone through like cost structure and pieces. We're not at that stage yet. We're just not there yet, but I don't envision that happening.
But the disbursement to CC, it wasn't that direct as this is going to offset the cost to our students by this percentage. Is that
No,
correct?
we don't have that information. It just went to a general fund at Washington Central. We sent a check to Washington Central in $18,000 increments twice a year. So we don't, so Andrew, because I know you're gonna ask, when I look at budget sheets from the current Community Connections program, I can't tell where that money goes.
Mhm.
It goes into Washington Central's pot.
Yeah. My overarching concern in asking that question is that I think an after-school program is in the community and public good. And and I think the idea of a hybrid payment model, what we have right now, fees for those who use it, but those fees being brought down by contributions from the community, I think is a pretty healthy model.
Mhm.
And I just want to ensure that we continue with that
Yeah.
general model and aren't putting too much of the cost and too much of that financial burden on those families who
Right.
rely on these
Right.
services.
No, I agree with you. And that's where we wanna go as well. That's the idea that we wanna make happen.
Michelle?
So it says under the, you just explained that the halftime person would be sort of an administrative position rather than not working directly with kids. And it says under here, recruit club advisors would be one of their responsibilities. Are we anticipating that the revenue from program fees is enough to pay the club advisors?
I think, so that's the piece that we have to think about with cost structure still. We're not there yet. And so there's lots of questions there, right? It's not a co-curricular because it's not
Right.
structured in the same way. I'm imagining 6 weeks programming 1 day a week, you know, very similar to what's happening now. So that doesn't fall under our co-curricular teacher contract. So we'd wanna look at how much do we need to, like that would be a new world for us. How much do we pay people for an hour and a half a week after school to do woodworking?
Yeah.
And if they're a community member, what does that look like versus if they're a teacher, what does that look like? Those are still questions that we need to uncover, which thus the position to help us work through those pieces.
But generally speaking, that's what you're anticipating, that the
Yes.
program fees would pay?
The program fees plus the budgeted amount would help pay for things.
Okay.
Eventually, if we increase our capacity, which I would really like to do,
Mhm.
I may be coming to the board in future budgeting years saying, let's increase this line. So that we can access more kids, so that we can intentionally target more kids with this programming.
So I definitely want to see more kids get in the program. And I'm okay with supporting it with the budget, but you had told us back at the beginning of this conversation, in the winter, that it was unusual for a community to budget funds for after school, because we're not legally
For middle school.
obligated to provide anything
Right.
after 3:00.
For middle school, yes, you're right.
So, but we had asked that question of the Vermont After School Association. Did we get any further information from them as to whether there are other districts that subsidize?
Did we ask Cassie that specifically?
I've talked to her, we can ask it more specifically. My understanding is there is some districts that do some sort of.
We don't really know the answer to that.
No.
We don't really know the answer to that. Like, for instance, she has mentioned that South Burlington does a lot of stuff in district that is traditionally covered, or that other schools tend to cover through
I mean, that-
contracts.
I
And
think
in
that-
the piece of separating the extended day and the
Yep.
licensed childcare, I'm not sure what districts do with that
Right.
piece.
It would be
I mean,
nice
we
to
do
know.
pay co-curricular stipends for sports coaches and, that kind of thing. Maybe just sports coaches, I don't know.
No, we do with drama and
Yeah.
we do with lots of things.
When we were having this discussion initially, and you'd be more familiar with this mechanism than I am, Libby, but we learned that many other schools that have a certain percentage of free and reduced lunch students are eligible for federal funding.
Yes.
For,
Mhm.
and we're not because
Right.
we don't have that percentage. So my perspective on this is because we're not, those students that do come from disadvantaged socioeconomic background shouldn't be penalized as a result for having lesser
For living in a
percentage
more wealthier
of-
place,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Good point, Andrew.
And so that's where I do see a role for the board and being a leader on this type of thing.
Steve and then Bridget.
I just have two clarifying questions. I have to admit to not understanding some of the structures. So you kind of draw the line, or maybe all of them do this, between 6th and 7th in terms of where that goes. I know that, at least from my daughter's experience in 5th and 6th, is that Drew's been the contact for 5th and 6th, and that she's been participating in mountain biking and all the same things, I think, as the older kids. I might be wrong about that, but, you know, and we're looking, you know, wood shop and all the other things. So does that mean in the future, 5th and 6th, I realize it's all being run under CC right now, but what's the decision, or what's the reasoning for cutting it at
Yeah.
6th? And then the other piece is that, Michelle just started mentioning a little bit, with the co-curricular versus the enrichment, they seem to be a really similar thing, and I'm wondering if it makes more sense for the district to adopt these things as co-curricular at 7th
We've
and
talked
8th,
about that.
rather than as enrichment. And I think that from a curriculum or from a whole child perspective, that actually integrates things a lot better than if we continue to consider it separate. Just questions.
No, those are really, thanks for asking both those questions. Don't let me forget the latter one, because as we've talked about both of these things. So one of the things that came up, Matt Roy actually brought this to our attention when we were talking about this in the after-school advisory committee, because we talked about originally the district could potentially take on the enrichment and make it middle school, 5th grade on. And Matt brought up the really good point of currently, and he worries about in the future, of a have and have not scenario. So if you're a kid who is in 5th grade and is in licensed childcare and not doing the mountain biking piece, he could potentially, as an expert and at that age level, see kids saying, "Well, I'm going mountain biking. You're stuck in the over here doing whatever you're doing over here." And so he was very concerned about people who have things, like would be considered the enrichment kids, and people who don't have things would be the licensed childcare kids. So that was very concerning to him, which I thought was a very good point. I'm not saying it as eloquently as he did in the meeting. And so when we started talking about that more, Matt and I started talking about that more, we started saying, well, if we make the assumption that we really work with our licensed childcare provider to provide engaging opportunities for our 5th and 6th grade that have a club structure to them where there's choice and that kind of thing, but it's still within the licensed childcare, we could have that piece. And then 7th and 8th grade, generally, we don't suspect that many 7th and 8th graders will participate in the licensed childcare because they're at the age where they may not need it. They may not need that space like a 5th grader might. So then we could offer the enrichment activities for those who would really like to participate in very specific choice activities for the 7th and 8th grade. Nothing's set in stone around that. That was our reasoning why. So that when I was talking to Matt, that was the reasoning why for that. The second part of your question around co-curriculars, we've talked about that too as a leadership team. on Tuesday. And some of the things that we were talking about is we could solely go that direction. And we talked about going that direction. We have way more flexibility if we don't. Because once you have the co-curricular in place, then it's in place and you can't add them ad nauseum. So if we have like quick 6-week bursts, that means we can change the program by year. Like that one didn't go last year. Let's try something else this year. And we can find a community member comes in and says, hey, I want to do a 6-week thing on oil painting. All of a sudden we can quickly make that happen. Whereas a co-curricular, we go through a contract, we find a person, it becomes a much more long process. So that's why the leadership team said, no, let's keep it as like very quick bursts of club activities. We could go either way though.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Does the term co-curricular mean, is the definition of that someone on our faculty is the advisor under the contract and gets paid?
Not necessarily somebody on our faculty, but it's part of our teacher contract. So
And it is a contract.
So the definition isn't really that it's this kind of programming versus that kind of programming. It's really
there's some very specific definitions in the contract. So then there's levels of payment in there. So like if it meets once a week for a semester, that's different than if it's a full year with multiple planning responsibilities versus, so it's just different. It's just different. It's a contracted item with
Sorry
more
to
rules,
jump ahead, Tina. I
more
just was
rules
getting
and less
confused by that
flexibility.
I'm curious to know if this 0.5 personers you've talked about, is this person also in charge of hiring the people that would run this program and supervising the people that would run this program?
Supervision would come from it would be a district responsibility. So the supervision they would be the monitor for that piece. They would be in charge of the hiring and getting it would go through me eventually, but they would be the ones finding, yes. I would envision that to happen.
Other questions, comments? Bridget?
So, to follow up on the point that Steve was making about age, I would have said that my sense was that in terms of the current enrichment programming at MS, that a lot of younger kids are using it, and that this structure may be a loss in that regard. Because as hopeful as I am about the license program being a great program, I'm not sure, just because of the transportation issues, that the license program is likely to be doing
They would be more limited to site-based until they solve the transportation dilemma. Yeah.
Right, and that's a problem. I'm not sure that. I mean, I think we've also discussed in the committee the possibility that the license program can wrap with enrichment.
Yeah.
So that you can
You can
be
build it
enrolled
out.
in the license program, but still
Yeah.
able to, on some days do other things if you're also
Yeah.
doing the enrichment program. And I think especially for 6th grade, when we moved the 5th grade there, I'm not sure that the thought about after-school care was totally thought through, and I think the 5th grade really needs after-school care,
License.
similar to what they used to have when they were at Union, and
Yeah.
5th graders went to that program
Yeah.
until they moved. But as the kids get older, I think that the appeal of these activities becomes greater.
What's interesting is one comment from the online piece, which I know only Jim and I have access to at the moment, but
I had it.
from the online feedback, one individual in the community said that the enrichment opportunities at Main Street are overwhelmed with 5th and 6th graders, so 7th and 8th graders often don't get an opportunity. They get left out of that, so it's interesting.
Well, because there's more of a childcare need for 5th and 6th graders,
Yeah.
so there's more pressure from parents to get kids enrolled when they're younger.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I said, this is a draft. It's not set in stone, and I am very much looking for feedback to see how we can make this bigger, or how we can make this better, and keeping Matt's concern, and I think the concern about haves and have-nots is a legit one. So if we were to bring it down to lower grade levels, how do we ensure that that doesn't happen?
I have one question following up on Steve's question about the co-curricular approach. First of all, I can totally understand and appreciate wanting to use a less bureaucratic approach that will enable us to deliver services quicker to kids that want those services. I think that's great, offer better programming sooner. What would be the advantage of a co-curricular versus the approach that you were talking about?
It'd be set. Families could rely on it, could know that there will be woodworking offered every fall by Jason, you know. So it would be something that people could rely on a little bit more. Honestly, I see more limits to that direction than I see benefits. I'd have to really think through. I'd have to think through a little bit more. The one that jumps to my mind is that it would be set. It's a contract, so it'd be set in stone a little bit better.
Even though this would likely be regularly occurring, particularly the successful programs, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I can't see any reason why that wouldn't be.
Right. Right.
Michelle?
This is pretty irrelevant, but I just want to say it in case this document gets circulated, and I think it will be on our website, right? And people may take an interest in it. It looks like the high school has 5 clubs.
No, I know.
And
that's I can tell you why that's like that.
They're
Sorry to
like
interrupt
3
you.
times.
No, I know. Today, Bridget gave me some really good feedback from the first draft.
Okay.
And one of them was, make sure that you put down, like, or
List
it would
what's
be really good
available.
for the board to know these are all the things that are offered right now.
Yeah.
So I was doing this at about 4:30 this afternoon, and so it was like quick off the top of my brain. And as I was doing it, I was thinking, I need to share this with the principals so
Yeah.
that they can make sure that everything's on here.
Yeah.
And that's why that happened.
Okay, just check it. So
Yeah.
before it gets circulated, because
We
it's
will
going
make
to make
sure
us
that
look
that
like the
piece-
lamest high school there is. That's not the image we want to put
No,
out.
Maybe
it's just
before
because
it's
it was my-
posted, you could
Yeah,
look that
we'll
up.
make sure that with that gets fixed. That's the reason why, because Bridget had such good feedback, and I was like, oh, I want to get that in before tonight, and then it just didn't get totally in there.
I think I saw Bridget.
So, this issue of the co-curriculars versus the clubs, I did not fully understand the bureaucratic piece, for lack of a better word. But one of the things that I have been concerned about in terms of the after-school big picture at the middle school, and I think at the high school, although I'm less familiar with it there, is that it's very hard to understand the big picture and to understand how, like, the district is looking at it 30,000 feet. What are all the things that we're offering to kids, and how are they coordinated? Is it the right mix of offerings? Is it the right mix of sports and STEM and drama and music? Do we have, are we hitting all the bases? What does it look like in terms of scheduling? Can you be on the soccer team and be in the jazz band at the same time? Like, how are we looking at that? Are we funding all of these things correctly?
And how
And
many
I-
kids are in sports?
How many kids are in these things?
If 2/3 of the students are in sports, maybe we only need after-school stuff for 1/3 of the kids. But if only 1/3 of the kids are in sports, then our after-school need might be a lot larger.
Right. I would really prefer if I'm not sure this is enough money. I'm gonna do that. I think we should consider committing to more money for this. I would like to see if we're gonna have an after-school coordinator, someone who can look at it with that lens and not create more silos around what's offered, but instead have someone who's really thinking about this as one big picture that includes the license piece also for the younger kids. But then, 5 to 12 includes all of these things, so that there's, these issues about, do we have a softball team and our kids going mountain biking are in the same conversation, and the same person is looking at it. And and I'll just finish where I was going with this, which is, we already budgeted this money, and we have repeatedly said, I've heard Jim say it over and over again, and Libby, that we are committed to expanding these offerings. But this is the money that has been used to budget what we currently have. And I think that it would be helpful to get a sense of the board of whether we're willing to commit to money out of the fund balance to expand this, so that we have the resources next year to start a really good program. And if they are self-sustaining, then we don't need to spend it. And that would be great, But if they're not, that the district
We can
knows that
pick
the
up.
money is there, and it's available so that we can fund it properly.
Great, I think I was just going to ask that question.
So-
That's exactly what I'd love to know too.
I would like to know what I would be funding, and I don't know that yet. So in other words, Libby has said this is the initial plan, and so what do we need and how much more do we need in order to do it? And so
Some real numbers.
some real numbers
Yeah.
would be what I would want to know before
Yeah.
I said, sure, let's do it. I have nothing against it,
Yeah.
I just want to know
Yeah.
how much would it cost?
This initial draft was to get the feelers out, yeah. But
Yes.
we do need some real numbers, you're right.
Yeah, no,
And
and I,
what is our timeline right now? Where are we in the process? So there's RFPs out,
For the licensed childcare piece.
right? So
And we're going on site visits this week and next to 3 of the sites. We have a after-school advisory committee on Friday to talk about the feedback we just got from the public forum. We'd like so the committee will be giving me a recommendation by the end of this month, right, Jim?
yes.
Yes. So we could make that decision around the licensed childcare piece. This piece would need to be in place by September. I mean, we'd need to have it by September. So I'm thinking that we'd want to, if we went this direction without new position, then we'd want to have that hire in July so they can get the ducks in a row that they need to get in a row.
Yeah, and to echo and I think build on what Bridget said, I mean, I'd love to get a sense because I think as we make these decisions, it's going to be, probably a somewhat stepped process. But I also think it's very important that we hit next year with, the programming that kids need and the community wants. And part of that might, for the administration's part, mean building some of this out before we go through our budget process. So I think it would be good to have a sense of the board whether, assuming it stays within a reasonable limit, there's support for, if Libby says, boy, if we added another 25,000, we could really get to where we need to be and have something to build on. That's the type of thing where she wouldn't come and, put things in place and then have us say, well, hold on.
So what are you looking for? Are you looking for, do we support what you've written, or are you looking for, gee, I wish I had another 25,000?
I think we're looking for support of the concept, including support that if we can, if we can, if this is something that makes sense and 37,000's all that's needed to do it in a way that makes sense starting next year, and that'll make it stable for next year, and then we can have a conversation the year after about whether we want to add to it. Or if after running some of the numbers, it's 37 plus a little bit, but I kind of want to get an endorsement of the concept within this number, or, perhaps more, but not, a huge amount more, because the administration just has not, they've got some ballpark ideas, but they haven't sat down pen and paper with Grant and really ran through all the scenarios to come up with what it would look like to have the type of programming that kids need and that the community's gonna want next year.
Got it, thank you.
Steve, and then
I
Andrew.
mean, I think there's so many fantastic reasons to do this. The fifth, sixth, though, kind of sticks a little here, because the problem is, as we move forward with licensing, we have to be really clear, I think, with what we want for those fifth, sixth, under a licensing agreement, under agreement for the
Yeah.
licensing kids, because I think that it's if we want to try to keep something of the quality that we've had, it can't shift towards that elementary model at all, really. What the kids running around in the gym at Union is very different than what a sixth grader or fifth grader is getting right now at the middle school. And I just want to be careful, because if we're going to split them and we're going to develop a vision for the enrichment, and we're going to contract out the licensed kids, we got to have definition about the 5, 6 as we do that. I think we can't put the cart before the horse on that.
Right.
Yeah, I think
and that's something we definitely could keep looking at. And just to be clear, our current situation handles 25 kids a day in a school of 350. So it's not the entire 5th and 6th grade that's being considered right now in any way, shape, or form. So we need to, we want to make sure that's one of my main goals, is to increase opportunity for particularly our middle schoolers who need this type of work, need this type of group activity and structure.
Yeah, and increase the number too. I mean, it would be great to get, more like 40-ish students at the middle school participating in that. And I think we do that by making exciting and accessible programming and building on the exciting and accessible programming. Andrew.
So I have a couple questions. The general vision for the coordinator that Bridget espoused just before, I love that general approach to coordination. If somebody is coming in, do we right now as a district have that information available? Is anybody keeping that information? How many kids are enrolled in what?
Is it on at my fingertips?
Well,
No. Could we
okay.
get that information? Yes.
So that's something that somebody could put to, if they came in July, I'm just thinking about the timeline of this, if they came in July, that's something that they would, with your team's assistance, be able to.
With time and
Yeah,
talking
okay.
to the right people, yes.
It would be a process, it sounds
Yes,
like, that's fine.
yes.
I was just curious to know where we are, in terms of that. And then, something that I think would be nice to have a little bit more, elucidation on is exactly how these programs might interact with this position and the programs that this position would be responsible for. And I've heard some
Which
different
these
ideas.
license programs?
The license program versus the enrichment
Interact.
programs, how do they interact with each other?
Yep.
And, would they be totally distinct? I don't, from a coordination perspective, I think
Yeah.
siloing is a real concern, but, anyways, I'm curious to know how.
And it's hard to answer that without having the licensed childcare provider
Right.
contracted yet.
When you're looking at these providers, so does this change, if this proposal, would this change how you view these providers?
In the RFP process?
Yeah.
No.
So, okay, some of their models, I guess my question is, would some of their models jive more than others with this type of approach?
Maybe.
Okay, that's,
I don't have I'd have to ask them specifically.
yeah.
I don't wanna speak to them, because that's not a question that's been posed to the bidder, so I would be making the assumptions based on what I've read.
But now, here's my last question, in terms of what they've, the proposal that they've responded to, is it based on more of a holistic enrichment and licensure combo, or is it based on just the licensure
The
component?
licensure.
Okay.
And I think that's where the community piece comes in, because the enrichment part is important to a lot of community members, and important to a lot of kids. So, and we're gonna need to have both in a really good place come August 27th or whenever school starts.
And it's really important to the district.
It's really important to the
as
district
well,
too, yeah.
and us to make sure that we have ample opportunities for kids to build relationships.
Michelle?
I'm just concerned that the halftime employee is not going to be adequate. And I would definitely support drawing on our fund balance, which I think we got a memo on the fund balance, so I know there's money in there. To expand that, because this person is, I know I know Burlington School District has a full-time after-school program coordinator. They have like 6 or 7 facilities, I think, so
They have
that's a
an
lot.
in-district, after-school program. They
Right.
don't contract out.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but this still is dealing with 2 separate facilities that are really, developmentally different kids, 8 different grades.
And if we truly want
Over-
somebody to vision and sustain and
Right.
grow,
So we may want either one full-time person who can oversee all of that, or a part-time at each building who can oversee for each building.
yeah,
But-
yeah.
To me, it seems like this person's gonna be killing themselves and maybe not making it happen the way we want it to.
More comments or questions? So I think this has been helpful in terms of giving some guidance as you
Yes,
steer through.
yes, hard numbers, look at a couple different scenarios, work through some more age ranges.
Yeah, but people are generally on board with
Mhm.
this as a viable option, and the possibility that it might cost a little more to do it right. It might not, but it might.
I think for explaining to the community too, though, having that licensure component, like what we're proposing is this licensure provider would cover this, these grades,
Yeah.
this area, this enrichment coordinator would cover this, and so that it's very tangible for people.
Yeah.
And they understand exactly what's going on, I think is gonna be really important to this.
Right, like we're providing childcare K-6, and then we're providing enrichment 5-12, and there's,
Or maybe even just
And
a
maybe
little
a
more
little
basic,
bit.
like, these are the options your children have for after-school care, and here are the ways that, you can sign up and enroll. 'Cause the thing is, there are terms like licensure out there.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think there's also a demand for enrichment K-12, and so I
Yeah.
think it's important
Yes.
that the message from the district not be that enrichment starts at some
7.
grade level, whether it's 7,
Yeah,
it's-
and Ryan and I are talking about that
Even
as
the word
well.
childcare is not a great word for what we're doing in our schools. If we're doing it in our schools, it's expected that it have an educational value of some sort.
Yep.
And not that childcare doesn't, but I mean, you can see it already in, second, third, fourth grades, that these kids are looking for more advanced programming than
Definitely.
they get right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think we want to make it more interesting and more interactive and more enriching, whether it falls under enrichment or licensing for all kids, K through 12.
we have also heard a demand though that it be reliable
Yeah.
and accessible and available in a,
Exactly.
And cover all
Yeah.
the parents at work, period.
Yep.
right,
Yeah.
Right,
No, for
absolutely.
those-
And available to more people.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's the basement upon which to build the house, but we need,
expand the availability, the reliability, the accessibility, and then
Yeah.
build,
And the quality.
and then
Yep.
quality and,
Well, thank you all. I'll be working on this with the team, and we'll probably bring you another draft in the coming weeks.
One final question. The state childcare subsidies that are
Yep.
broken out in the chart that we were just going over in the last forum, those do not apply to enrichment, is that correct?
No,
Just the
those are
licensure?
for the license
Okay,
piece.
Yeah, Libby, could the next draft have maybe more of a summary on expenses and all the numbers we've talked about tonight just seem so low to me to make this successful. And I'm sure the after-school committee has evaluated and reviewed and looked at things. I don't expect to go through all that again, but just maybe a better description of this is how much we've spent on, or community connections uses this much, or the Y would do that much, or just more
We
of a
can do that to the
history.
best of our ability. I might not be able to bring you hard numbers.
Right, like I'm not expecting it to be like to the penny, but it just, $37,000 just doesn't seem like it can possibly pull off what we're trying to do, and just maybe more justification for how we can make that happen.
Well, people are paying for
similarly,
this.
Right, but how far is that gonna go? Like I
You
said,
know,
I haven't seen
That's why I
it,
wanted
right.
to know too, right.
it would be great, along with the number of kids participating in sports programs, to see our athletic program budget.
Yeah. When
'Cause
you were
that-
talking
'cause
earlier,
the
I do know
athletic
that
program is
our
strictly-
extracurricular budget is spent, what did Grant tell us, 2/3 of it is
about
spent on
2/3
both
is spent
sports?
on sports.
Of
Our extracurricular budget.
2/3 is sports, yeah,
Mhm.
so are 2/3 of our kids doing sports?
That's a
And
good
do
question.
That's a
do
good-
kids pay a fee to do a sport?
No.
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 So it seems like there's some equity stuff going on too
It's
amidst
the
all of
siloing
this.
thing too, yeah.
You know, that like it's free to do a sport after school, but then it's gonna cost to do different,
Yeah.
different kind of activities. It's interesting.
Well, and the sports budgeting is kind of mysterious too, because like the Nordic team doesn't have transportation in its budget. And I don't know how that decision was made, but
There's ski places.
that's that
good
gets
endurance
pretty hectic every year trying to get kids to Nordic meets without a transportation budget. And, some sports, the uniform budget is the uniform, for their outfit is pretty non-existent. So how the budget is allocated among sports is,
And I like your question about the number too, because sometimes we've supported a sport that has hardly anybody in it. I'd rather pay for the uniforms for the people that, we've got enough to field a team, for example, kind of thing. And that's been iffy in the past.
Keep sending those sports questions, because I get a lot of them, and I now have a monthly meeting with Matt Link, because I was like, I need to meet, this is coming up a lot, so I need to learn more about how processes are done and stuff, so know that I just started a monthly meeting with Matt out of need and, because of questions that I get around sports, so send them my, when you get them, send them my way for those kind of things, I don't know that. I've never heard that before, so that's just really good information as I'm continuing to learn all the nuggets and pieces of our district.
But then our Nordic team doesn't have a
Transportation budget.
Right, they have to drive.
Or that people have different uniform budgets. That's strange to me, so.
I think our Nordic team also has one member.
I don't know, my kid did it.
Which I'd love to have seen it have a lot more.
My kid did it 3 years ago, and there were like 18 kids, I don't know, and they had to get themselves to meets, but then parents didn't want kids driving other kids, and it was challenging.
Yeah. I would love to see.
I don't know what the status of the program is now.
I think it ebbs and
Yes.
flows.
Yeah.
And this all feeds into the other conversation around what's going on at the middle school for sports. And then how's the rec department dovetail into our sports program and create a continuous path for kids who are doing baseball or basketball or whatever, and how it's hard to coordinate all that. And I'm not saying we're not doing a good job, I'm saying it's hard, and that it has to be reevaluated at some regular level to determine, we've got this big cohort of softball players coming through all of a sudden, or frisbee, that's not the word, disc players coming through.
Ultimate, please,
thank you.
please.
And, I'm seeing them raising money for a club at the grocery store, but they're not really a sport, but they're the biggest group, or the girls volleyball
team.
Huge, right? And I was like, what? That's not a sport, they're going to have to club. And, it's so, I don't know how to do that, but it's, now we're talking about adding in the enrichment, which is sports often, it's mountain biking and hiking, and it's just not team sports.
Actually, that's a good question, because in the past, haven't we not sort of competed with the rec department? If the rec department offered something, we didn't offer it if they were willing to offer it. I don't know how that works, but.
It's not so much competition as continuity between the programs.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's too worried about competition. It's more holes, I think.
Well, I meant if the rec department offered it, we didn't, because we didn't have to, we offered something else, and so we should be cognizant of that when we're looking at the big picture.
It's only 5-6, right?
Yeah.
Rec department ends at 6.
It's making me think a lot, as I'm listening, what's the district's role, and who is that person in the community? I just don't know who, we can't take on everything, right? And we can't offer everything to every kid.
Right.
So, but what is our role? What is our role here to ensure continuity, ensure opportunities?
And what should we offer?
And what should we offer for opportunity? And I like the question posed earlier, is do we have an equal opportunity for multiple avenues for kids to pursue? Because I'm not sure we do. And that's a really good question for us to look at what we can control, but we can't control everything. And there is a responsibility from a community aspect to offer things to kids too. I actually have a meeting with Bill Fraser next week to talk about some of these ideas.
Yes.
So I think it's on somebody's mind over there at City Hall. Anyway.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, are we ready for
Let's try to get Renee up.
Maybe I'll throw up the screen.
Yep.
Oh, she's gonna be on the big screen.
It's gonna be on,
A breakout
Do we have any
teachers whose
consensus yet about days and
previously
extended board meetings?
Yes, I'm gonna send her an email.
Student connections.
Right.
So they started with 21 sections.
Oh.
We meant to
Right.
do it
Looks like the extended days will be.
whatever the free and reduced
Like
lunch.
in the high school, is there?
I don't
in
know
high
if it
school.
would matter, this is grant funding.
Well, in the middle school there,
I couldn't tell you.
in the middle school is more similar to the elementary
Last
school,
year, when
in
community
that there's a
was
set
operating
number of
like it has
kids
the last
with
5 or 10 years.
Okay.
I think
good
May,
to know.
May
or,
5th,
you know, there
May
in
1st,
seventh and eighth grade,
and
it's
June
teams of
5th.
two teachers,
completely
and
sustainable.
each
We're gonna
of
do
those
two.
teams has
Well, there's
Kind of ran out of
somebody
dates.
in coordinating
And
it.
then-
Probably
But
the
in the high
17th
school,
and 19th.
it's like Grady County.
And it's
No,
everybody's-
not
There's no
really.
other.
Only, usually
We
foreign
Or 20.
language.
To Washington Central.
Yeah, so we could see, yeah.
But that's it.
And
That's it.
Oh, okay, so it really is all.
And the,
I just have to look at all the
music,
responses and see which one of those days.
music
which
didn't
of those
used to be
things.
so
I think they're
elective,
all
it used to be that everybody had to do with the
Yeah,
music.
I was thinking.
They
I
band,
Oh,
you don't
we
have
can hear
records,
you.
so
There
now
you
there's
go.
band
Now we just
orchestra
gotta put you
course,
up on
and
the screen.
study
I just wanted to
skills,
say
which
hi
is
to
just study
Adam.
hall. It's high
My
school.
name is-
Adam.
So that's what,
Yeah, see,
that should be pretty.
He's our everything man.
That's
We
I
used to
can,
actually
obviously,
get
8 o'clock at night.
He's at the board meeting, for crying out loud. Hold on, we just gotta put you on the big screen here.
It wasn't great
Okay.
because
Can I see everyone, can you flip the screen down a little bit there, so I can see?
why are we
Oh, yeah, because she's
Hi.
not being able to see.
I see Jim.
Hello.
Is Michelle there too?
Yep, she's way at the
Yeah,
end.
Michelle's
way
at
over.
the end.
Hi Renee.
Hi, Renee.
There's Steve over there.
Oh, hi,
He's
Steve.
being an outcast today. We won't let him on the table.
Okay, now I'm getting dizzy.
Alright, sorry. We're just trying to get you on the big screen.
For some.
I'm sorry I don't have a better
That's why
backdrop.
I was asking.
It's very nice.
It's because there might be opportunities for students who want to study. So.
Well, see, we used to do that, and
Yeah.
so for instance,
It's
they
like
had an
it's
advanced
searching,
computer programming
yeah.
class, and we did not.
Waiting.
But then
We're
we
just trying to
changed
get
Oh, there you are.
the
Okay.
schedule.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
It's not.
So, everyone, this is
But also we
Renee
now have advanced
DeFore, who is going to be our new high school principal. And Jim and I thought it was a good idea for you all to see her and meet her.
Yeah.
Online. And ask any questions or anything you wish.
Yeah, no,
Hi,
thank you.
everyone.
Hello, yeah, thank you, Renee, for taking some time to introduce yourself to the board. You've met me, I guess all the board members, I guess, can do a quick introduction, but very excited to have you coming on board. And I'll let you introduce yourself, but why don't the board members just give a quick 2-second introduction, and then Renee can introduce herself and give a little background, and then we can ask her whatever questions we have.
Can
You
you
know
hear
me?
Jim? Can you hear?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Talk loud, use teacher voices.
Yeah, so I'm Jim Murphy. I'm the board chair. I've been on the board for a while. I'm for my day job, I work for the National Wildlife Federation, doing legal and environmental advocacy. Tina.
Hi, and I'm Tina Muncy, and I've been on the board a while, and I'm retired.
Oh, I can't see her.
You
Oh.
can see Tina, it's very important to see her.
Hi.
Alright,
But I
good.
did used to teach, and I was a principal once upon a time.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah.
Hi, Bridget Acey. We met at one of the meet and greets at the high school.
Oh, hi.
Nice to see you again.
I can see you from a distance.
Great.
Sorry.
I've been on the board a few years, also a lawyer in my day job.
Sure. Renee, I'm Ryan Zajac. I'm one of the Roxbury reps on the board. I've been in school board for quite a while now. I was in Roxbury, the merger board, the new merge board, lots of school board fun. And outside of my school board work, I spend time running the small library in Roxbury.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Ryan.
Hi Renee, I'm Lisa Frost, and I'm also a Roxbury representative. I did not have the pleasure of meeting you at your visit, and I am a freelance educator.
Oh, okay.
She's making up the title. She
Can't
goes.
see her more about that.
It sounds so fancy. Hi Renee, I'm Andrew. I'm the newest member of the board, and for my day job, I'm the deputy state auditor, and I look forward to meeting you.
I look forward to meeting you too, Andrew.
Andrew's super good at math.
It's a good thing since he's the auditor.
I'm Michelle, who you already met. I have been on the board the longest, which is 6 years now. And in the daytime, I am the director of a local watershed group. And I have 2 daughters who are both in high school. One is graduating, so you won't meet her. The other will be a sophomore next year.
Great.
And then Steve is over here.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, I'm Steve Hinchin. I'm actually not a board member right now. Because I was reelected, but I forgot to go get sworn in at the clerk. So I'm sitting in the audience. But I have a couple of daughters who will be in middle school about the time you show up, and I have a small business.
Oh, great. Nice to meet you, Steve. Nice to meet all of you.
We're missing one board member tonight, Becky, who.
Yes, she was not feeling well, so she was unable to come.
Ah, yes. I love seeing you.
So,
do you want me to tell you a little bit about myself?
Yeah, love to.
Yeah, so I've been in education right out of college. I started teaching in an alternative school when I was 21. So I grew up right outside of Portland, Oregon in Vancouver, Washington. After going to school at Southern New Hampshire University, which used to be New Hampshire College when I went there many, many years ago. But when I finished up my college career, I moved back to my hometown, taught a few years in Vancouver at an alternative high school, and then decided to kind of get out of the rain and go move to San Diego. And that's where I spent most of my high school or teaching career, was in San Diego. And then as I got my administrative credentials and my master's degree, I moved to El Segundo, was a principal there for 4 years, assistant principal for 1, a principal for 4. There we became the first international baccalaureate school, actually the 3rd public school in all of Los Angeles County to become international baccalaureate. And then my father passed away in that time, and my mom, I'm an only child, and my mom moved to the East Coast to be back with her immediate family. So I wanted to be closer to her, but I did not want to be living in Philly or New York City. So I put my finger on the map and landed in Chicago, which was very similar in a lot of respects to where I grew up, kind of that Midwest culture. And then I spent 6 years in Lake Forest, working at a high-achieving middle school. And now I'm here, and I am so excited to come to Montpelier. I have to tell you that when I saw the job description, and then after I came there, I'm just even more excited about all the work that's being done there. I think one of the things that's been most important to me as I've gone through this whole process is not only to find a place where I feel like my strengths can be utilized, but also a place where I feel like I can learn from the work that's already been done. And that certainly is the case at Montpelier High School. It just is being done there is phenomenal. I was really excited when I initially saw the job description. I was so excited to see the work that was being done there as far as personalized learning plans, the flexible pathways to graduation, the work on equity and equality. There's just so many wonderful things happening there. And then to come there and then see it all kind of come to life with the students and the staff and the parents and some of the board members that were there. It was just a phenomenal experience. So I am really looking forward to coming there. And in fact, I'm coming there next weekend to find my place. So it's getting exciting and getting very real.
Do you have questions?
Yeah, questions for Renee?
I would be I'm just interested, and I realize you're just getting into this, but interested to hear about the transition, how you interact with the outgoing principal and the team here as part of transitioning into the job.
So Bridget asked about transition. Could you hear her?
Yeah.
Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, I can start.
Okay.
Mike and I have already been in contact with one another, so when I'm there, unfortunately I'm coming on the last day before spring break, which is an awesome time to show up and see how great things are at the school. So Mike and I will have a chance to just touch base then, but he is going to be around the following week, so he and I are going to have some time to connect that following Monday, just kind of one-on-one. And then I'm planning to be up there in June, so I'm planning to get a place probably June 1st, and then kind of sporadically spend some time within the school, just kind of transitioning a little bit and kind of getting a feel for things with Mike, with the staff members, and with the students as well. So looking forward to that. And then Libby, you can add whatever your thoughts are.
No, you added on. So Mike is very open to making sure this transition is as smooth as possible. So yeah, they've already connected. We have plans for her to just walk around with him and really see the school through his eyes, because it's unique, his perspective. And then the beautiful thing also, I don't even know if you know this, but Mike's new position is right down the road. And one of his roles is working with new principals to the position, to mentors and things like that. So Renee, I don't even think we've talked about this yet, but principals who are new to buildings in Vermont, there's a state law that we get you a mentor and all of that. So Mike is now in charge of attaching mentors to new principals. So we got it in there to get you a good one.
Mike be my mentor.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know if you want that, but but yeah, so we have that plan already starting, and so McCraith is making it very easy.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Any other questions for Renee?
Nothing?
You know, something we didn't talk about, I'm looking at Ryan and Lisa right now, and something that we didn't talk a lot in the interview process is that the merger with Roxbury Village is still pretty new. When you come next week, maybe I'll take you through Roxbury. We'll blink and we'll be there. And then, but the students coming, they're kind of working their way through our system to be more and more at Montpelier High School. And I think just to put on your plate, that's a piece that you're gonna have to really work at to ensure that kids are being folded into the high school, because it's different. They went to different schools before, and you know, like just the arrival of buses to the building will be unique, and kids getting on and coming to school. So there's gonna be some challenges and some opportunities there.
Yeah. And I think the beautiful thing about Montpelier High School, at least what I've seen and heard and researched, is that there's, from what I understand, the students and staff are very welcoming to students. Not to say that there isn't work that can be done, but there's such a presence of student voice, and I just based off of my time there, I feel like students definitely will have a part to play in welcoming students from Roxbury into Montpelier High School, and what that looks like and how we can make that better.
Yeah.
And just to add, at freshman year, we also get a big influx of kids who have been going to private schools and kids who are coming into our district from other districts, because we have an exchange kind of a program, and we have a lottery. So, for instance, when my daughter, who's a senior now, when she was a freshman, I think their 8th grade graduation was like 50 people. And then when they started freshman year, they had like 70 people. That's a big jump.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, folding Roxbury kids into that, you're also getting a bunch of other new kids. So
Yeah. And I think coming from other districts and coming from areas like Chicago and San Diego and whatnot, you know, I think conversations like that and looking at those numbers, and does it make sense for us to do something? And I don't know what's currently being done. Is there a freshman transition? If not, you know, is that something that we can look at as to how our students transition into the high school? Just speaking of those private school students and students from Roxbury, how can we get them more connected from day one?
it could definitely be stronger.
Your eyes on the freshmen. We do have a transition program run by students mainly who take control of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's pretty cool to see, because I saw it for the first time this year. So it'd be nice to have other fresh eyes on it to say, how can we do that? If we need to do it better, how do we? Or it's pretty rocking right now.
Great.
Any other questions for her? Thank you, Renee.
Yeah, thank
I'm so
you.
excited to meet all of you virtually, and soon we'll meet each other in person. And I'm looking forward to it.
All right, thanks
Yeah.
for taking your time tonight. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thanks.
Bye,
Good luck with
guys.
the transition.
And
Never mind.
I think that's it. So just point of order, I will be sending around pretty close to landing on some dates for the extended meetings and retreat. Likely extended will be 1st of May and 5th of June. Gonna reserve probably 4:30 out, but we might not need that much time. And the week of the 17th is probably most likely for the retreat.
Wait, can you say all that again? I
You
can't
said
hear you.
1st of June and
The extended 1st of May, 5th of June, that pretty much count on that.
So what time might that start?
1st of May.
We're gonna book 4:30, but depending on how we line up, we may bring in, some sort of moderator, facilitator for a couple of those, or trainer, like for the communications part, we're gonna reach out to VSBA. And then the other part we wanna do is a deep dive on equity, depending on how broadly we do that. And whether we bring in some sort of facilitator, moderator, will depend on the timing. So book 4:30, it may be 5 or 5:30, but just, for scheduling purposes, book 4:30.
And that's
and
the
then
first meeting of both May and June.
First meeting of both May and June.
Is going to start quite early.
Yeah.
And what are you eyeing for the retreat?
Week of the 17th.
June 17th.
June 17th.
So I'll weigh in on that. There are some days there that I won't be able. Oh, actually, maybe it might work out.
It seemed to be a good week for folks.
And technically, it's not a retreat.
It's an extended meeting.
It's an
Just a
extended
big
meeting.
meeting.
Yes.
We can't
It's
have
an extended
retreats.
We
on-site
don't have
meeting.
retreats.
So the week of the 17th,
We can call it
if we
whatever
have
we
any
want, it's just still a
preferences
public.
that week, if we have any preferences for days that week.
Did you fill out the Google?
I know that the Tuesday and Thursday don't work for Libby, so we're really talking about 17th, 19th, or 21st.
17th, 19th. For
And I just wanted
a full
to-
day, right?
For a full day. And I just wanted to comb through people's answers and see if there were any of those days that, I don't recall any of them being off the charts, but before I picked a date, wanted to finalize it. And the 19th we have a meeting. So maybe we'll do it that day and
No.
not have it.
Folding
No, not.
meeting, sort of.
Well,
Oh,
change the
all
time of the
day
meeting.
and then a
just
meeting?
Be the meeting.
Welcome to my world.
Huh?
It's your world, not mine.
Right.
I'm glad this morning.
All right, I think we have a motion to adjourn and a little early, or,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thanks all.